Well, that was David Cameron. Now, experimental drugs are being used in the fight against Ebola, and now here in the UK, the government is considering whether to allow terminally ill patients to be given untested medicines for other diseases as well. A new law would allow some people dying of cancer to be volunteering to treat with unlicensed drugs. Its backers argue the UK should follow the same principle adopted by the World Health Organization in that treatment for Ebola patients. Well, let's discuss this a little more. It's a fascinating topic for discussion. Alex Smith, whose son suffers from Duchenne muscular dystrophy, is here with us. And also in our Birmingham studios is Dr. David Nicholl, a consultant neurologist. Thanks to both of you for being with us here on Global. To you, Alex, first of all, you've been working with Lord Saatchi, who is the man who's putting forward this new law. I mentioned your son Harrison there in the introduction. Tell me a little more, first of all, about his condition.
So Harrison's got something called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a catastrophic muscle wasting condition that over time affects every skeletal muscle in his body. So unfortunately, as it progresses, he'll lose the ability to walk, probably by the time he's 10. He's currently 8. And many boys with Duchenne don't survive much beyond their mid-20s.
It must be extraordinarily distressing to deal with that every single day. You wrote in a blog, and I was reading it earlier in the day, doing nothing is not nothing, you say. It is potentially fatal. Just tell me a little more about why you come to that conclusion.
Well, at the moment, we've got a population of Duchenne boys, and there is nothing that we can currently do. There's no treatment, there's no cure. So we need to find something, and that process to finding something is generally a long one. And biotech companies are working on a lot of aspects of it for us now, but the chance of sitting back and letting them just get on with it doesn't seem right to me. To me, we need to proactively move forward, which is where Lord Saatchi's innovation bill has come in.
And I'll come back to that in a moment, but Dr. David Nicholl, now you are vehemently against any change of law like this. Just tell me why.
Well, I don't think it solves the problem. In fact, I don't think the Saatchi bill is quite aware of what the problem is. The problem is getting good clinical trials, and the risk with this is that you get large numbers of poor quality trials, and there is a genuine risk of patient safety, and that's indeed why organisations like the Medical Protection Society, today have come out against it, and even Victims Against Medical Accidents.
Tell me more about the safety, because you think potentially this opens the door to charlatans and also lawsuits, but it's the charlatans I'm most interested. Tell me a little more about why you think that.
Well, I'll give you an example, and multiple sclerosis is a very serious disease. A number of years ago, there were some Italian researchers who suggested that abnormalities in the veins, venous anomalies basically, were the cause of MS. No one seriously in the MS community believed this was true, but these researchers, even though there wasn't really good evidence, suggest that stenting the veins would treat MS. I had a patient who went over to Eastern Europe to have such a treatment, and was advised that it wouldn't work, basically. Now, subsequently, I know of one patient who died, and another that had open cardiac surgery for these stents, and the FDA and other regulators have said that there isn't really scientific basis behind it.
So risk, the real reason that you're against it. Alex, to you, I mean, underpinning everything they do, presumably, is your obvious efforts to relieve your son's suffering. Isn't the danger that you could give him an experimental vaccine and that actually adds to his suffering?
There's always a chance of that happening, absolutely. When you've got a child who's dying, like we have, and like many patients out there, the risk-benefit that you work with, the percentage you work with, is entirely different. We are willing to accept a greater risk. Dr. Nicholl's talking about some aspects that have happened in the past, and right now we're talking about a bill that hasn't even gone through Parliament. It would be strange to be using those examples as a reason why you can't do it. This bill strategically says it's against charlatans.
David, talk to Alex, because he says he is in the position where you can't do anything, you can't do nothing, you have to do something. Why not do this thing?
Well, we have had examples. I mean, if you think of the BSE crisis and variant CJD, very distressing disease, invariably fatal. And indeed, the Department of Health allowed trials of PPS that went forward. They were negative, okay. Not a proper clinical trial, but on a compassionate basis that treatment was allowed, but the view was that it was negative. So I would say that the existing legislation is there. The problem is trying to get people in trials, and the question I would say is, why is it, let's say hematologists, if you present with acute leukemia, almost invariably you will be put into a randomised trial. And that's really, we should be learning from other specialties. What are the problems that cause recruitment in trials? Because we want more good quality data, not rubbish data.
But Alex is talking about, in a sense, trying something that's outside the current realm. Don't people have the right to do that? It was interesting, earlier in the week, I was talking to a man whose son was paralysed. Now, he was told by the very best in medicine that actually he should spend his money actually putting that into the care of his son. He chose to actually donate it to research, and that has led to the dramatic breakthrough we saw this week with a man actually getting feeling into his legs. People do have the right to try something new, do they not?
But that was proper, valid research, and even those researchers, I mean, I think those results were fantastic, but even they would say that what they need to do is do the proof of principle with more patients. So the mechanisms are there. I don't think that this legislation will actually improve patient care.
Alex, I know you were trying to get in.
I think the important thing to consider here is not just about clinical trials. It's about allowing doctors and patients to work together in partnership to find innovative treatments.
Sure, but sometimes they don't, because the doctors, as you've just heard, don't want to go down a certain path until certain things have been done. You're in a position where you do want to do that. In terms of morally, ethically, you say that you're in a position where you need to try anything. I mean, effectively, doesn't that boil down to you deciding to experiment on your son? I know that's rather blunt, but do you think that you have the right to do that, ethically, morally?
Yes, but you have to go into that process with sound judgment, looking at data. It's not a fact that you just give them anything and try it. There would be data associated with it, and also a framework within the bill that allows you to do so.
David, the government is backing this particular change in the law. If it does go through, for someone in your position, do you think it opens you up to dilemmas, problems, if it does go through?
I think it does, because there's a risk that when I'm having conversations about extremely difficult issues where, as your other speaker was saying, a terminal illness, being viewed as the bad guy, that's just being obstructive, when you've actually got very valid concerns about the safety of a particular treatment.
Well, there we have to leave it. Dr. David Nicholl and Alex Smith, thanks very much. It is interesting to see if everything we've seen with Ebola intellectually actually breaks the deadlock, and we will see and watch and follow the course of this bill through the House of Lords. It is in the House of Lords tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining us here on Global to discuss that